Now, the 3-time defending champion of the Coaches versus Cancer tournament, Nate Bauer, sir, welcome.
Hey, what's going on?
I mean, practice makes perfect. Last 3 years, holding up the trophy, kind of gave me that Nicholas feeling.
You know, I'm trying to remember the last time we talked. I posted a 77 2 weeks ago. I was pretty happy about that. And then I went out on Tuesday this week and was not as good on a different course.
Oh.
So, you know, some things to clean up a little bit.
Well, no. 2-3 weeks ago, I shot 75, and I said, that's it. The next score is going to be exponentially worse. All right, so it happens. Back in early April, Yannick went down to Miami and did some NBA pre-draft camp workouts. And I knew he shot the ball really well. And that's when I started to think, okay, this is real. And I figured, I think I told Pat Flannery, I said, he's going to get to the G League Elite Camp. Right? There's no question about that. Now it's played out where he's not only in the draft, but because of attrition, he's moving up in the draft. I mean, not just by what he's doing, but the attrition number, he's moving up. He's going to be the first Penn State player drafted since Seth Lundy, who was drafted right after Jalen Pickett in the same draft. So what's your thought on how the process did play out for him?
Yeah, I think it's tough for Penn State. I mean, obviously it's tough for Penn State.
Sure.
NBA draft picks come around so infrequently for the program that obviously it's a loss. I think it started as not that, right? When he first entered his name, the sentiment kind of around the program was more along the lines of, hey, this is win-win because he can get that experience, get some new eyes, put his name in people's consciousness at that next level. But with very little threat, I think, is probably the word of actually losing him.
Right.
He is clearly a player. Anybody who watched him this season saw both his potential, especially at the end of the season, but also his areas that need improvement, right? I mean, this is not a polished player by any means. He's a unique player. Obviously, you can't teach the size that he has, and he has a lot of skills that will translate and that do translate. But I do think that it began as more of a, oh, well, this is a good thing for Penn State to have him go through this experience. Yeah. And as it went along, and he had those workouts and he got some feedback. I think the feedback started as he's probably a late second-round guy, but could get drafted. Yep. Right? He's a guy who had the potential to get drafted. But then through the G League camp, once he stood out there and tested and had the athleticism numbers that he did, and then, took a little bit of a step back once he started playing against the guys in the normal NBA draft combine. But it wasn't so dramatic as to upend the trajectory that he was on. And that trajectory was, hey man, this guy's hot. He's one who is intriguing a lot of scouts, intriguing a lot of media personality types. And as that went along, it became more of a, hey, he could be a late first-round guy, right? Early second-round guy. And when that comes into play, it's tough to turn that up, and he didn't.
Right. And again, I think for the program, when he came back from Miami in early April, they're like, oh, boy. I mean, I think at that point they were like, okay, you got to start thinking about, okay, let's seriously talk Plan B here, which they've been talking about Plan B for weeks now. So it's not like it's not there. But when he came back from Miami, I think that was the beginning of, okay, this is serious. Let's see how it plays out. Here's another element that nobody's talked about, but I think is important here. You and I both know, Nate, that the NBA is a 19, 20-year-old draft league. I mean, that's what it is. Yannick's 22. Staying in say, if he went back to Penn State, he would then be a 23-year-old draft prospect next year. And I wonder if that entered into this at all.
Yeah, that's a good question. Clearly he had just a lot to consider, right? I mean, he's a guy who, had those 3 years playing at Penn State and obviously Northern Illinois, but he also was playing internationally before that, right? He's a Swiss-born kid. He has experience playing really all over the world. And so with that experience, you do have to ask, when is, like, there is so much of an inexact science to all of this, and that is bottom line. That goes across the spectrum, right? That goes from NFL stuff, NBA. Mm-hmm. When is the right time to pull the trigger, to go for, take your shot at what ultimately all of these guys are working for? I remember having a conversation. This is a tangent, but I had a conversation with Eric Galco, who runs the Shrine Bowl. Mm-hmm. And this was before Sean Clifford was entering his redshirt senior season. And it was, hey, he's going to come out after this year. It has to come out after this year because no NFL team wants a 24-year-old quarterback, right? Well, he didn't. He didn't do that, right? It ended up being better for Sean Clifford to stay at Penn State, have the 2 years that he did to cap his career, and move on from there, right? He kind of spurned that advice. Mm-hmm. Well, this is really in the same vein of, okay, well, look at what everybody else is doing in college basketball, right? The biggest headlines that came out of yesterday, which was the deadline to either stay in the draft or go back to school, is how many guys stayed.
Yes.
Right? How many guys how many guys are going back to school?
Right.
Right? The sentiment broadly, nationally, is college basketball is going to be loaded with NBA players next season because of what the commitment for NIL is. Mm-hmm. Right? These guys can make money. They can do well, and have another year of seasoning and still be highly sought after NBA prospects. Well, is that the case with Yannick? Right? You have to ask yourself, I think, being honest, and I think Penn State has to be honest with itself, Penn State fans have to be honest with itself. What could Yannick do on the team that he would be surrounded by that would put him in a position to elevate his stock higher than what it's going to be for this draft?
Yeah, and that's something. But you know what? The odd thing is, and because I do a lot of pre-work, there's nobody in the face of the earth, unless you really do some of the stuff that we have to do. You have no idea what the other teams even have. I mean, Maryland's roster? Name a guy in the Maryland's roster. Nobody can. I can because now I've done it. Okay? But outside of Purdue, Michigan State, and Wisconsin, nobody can tell you who's on anybody's roster, yet they already tell you what place you're going to finish. Now, Penn State has to do some, catch-up work. Part of it's going to be, and you and I have referred to the two European players, all right? But they're going to have to do a little bit more to get this roster to 11 or 12.
Yeah, it's just being honest, I think that it is an issue right now. I do think that the due diligence has happened, right? This isn't a staff that is sitting on its hands just waiting for Yannick to make a decision. They've been active. They're setting up their plan B situations. But the one thing that I don't think they wanted to happen that has ended up happening is having a big freshman class. Mike Rhodes understands, right? He has lamented each of the past two off seasons size. Size and girth was the way that he phrased it after the year came to a close. And now, if you're looking at the way that this roster is broken down, they're super heavy in the younger classes. And I'm not saying that Caden Mingo can't play and be good right out of the gates. He can. Yeah. But there are some players in this true freshman class that they're bringing in that don't necessarily have Big Ten bodies. which really thins out. And you even saw that last year, right? Miles Goodman didn't have a Big Ten body, right? Javon Carter didn't have a Big Ten body. There were things that hampered their ability to contribute out of that freshman class, and I think that it's a reasonable concern to suggest that these guys that they have that are coming in are in the same boat. And so now you're down to Freddie DeLeon, Eli Rice,
Dom Stewart. Dom Stewart.
Yeah, Yannick being gone is a significant piece of that. That said, as you referred to, and obviously I think it's enough of a conversation at this point where the Cats more or less out of the bag. They're going to bring in 2 Euros, okay, who are ready to play. They will contribute. They will be good. For Penn, at least one of them will be good and will play a bunch for Penn State this season. But there is still very much after this, with Yannick, work to be done to fill out the roster and really have a legitimate rotation, right, to play in the Big Ten. I mean, that's not even that doesn't even bring into account how competitive they can be. They don't have guys that are ready to play at this level, and so it is going to be a major project for Penn State. Has a new strength coach, right, for basketball.
Yes, they do.
And through the non-conference schedule to get these guys ready to play.
All right, couple of things. The ACC, after getting only 3 teams into the NCAAs last year, Duke, Clemson, and a gift to North Carolina, is going to reduce their conference schedule from 20 to 18. Very quietly, the Big 12 will be reducing from 20 to 18. Should the Big Ten consider that?
Wow, that's a good question. I think some of and I can't remember who talked about it, but almost like one of the I think it was a Big Ten coach talked about effectively leaving dates open so that you can schedule on the fly to add NCAA net quality matchups to your schedule at the end of the season if that's the position that you're in as a program, right? And I think that's super intriguing, right? If you're for instance, Penn State this past season, and you are at the bottom of the league standings and you're not in any position to really put yourself in a position to make it to the NCAA tournament, well, the teams that are playing you that are on the bubble, it does them no service to play Penn State, and it doesn't do Penn State any service to play a really good team. So if the Big Ten adopted that type of a scheduling mindset, I think that would be super intriguing. And look, you could translate this conversation to football just as easily, and what the SEC is debating right now. Right? James Franklin has been adamant for years how, yes, there's an imbalance between the Big Ten and the SEC for playing 8 conference games versus 9, but also what the motivations were for the Big Ten to go to 9 games and what the ramifications of those 9 games are, right? Look, money makes a lot of stuff go round in this business and these sports, these national landscapes. But at the end of the day, what is the cost of that if you aren't competitive when it comes to winning championships, right? Or what is the benefit financially of winning championships? And I think all of those conferences you can debate very seriously in both sports, right? What is the right move to make? Because certainly the TV partners for the ACC aren't going to be thrilled, right, to see a reduced load of in-conference games. But hey, if it gets more of their teams into the NCAA tournament, ultimately, that's probably better for the ACC.
And the Big 12 is doing the same thing. Now, the next part is NCAA President Charlie Baker says he sees value in expanding the NCAA tournament by a handful of teams. He said, we had good conversations with CBS and WBD, which is Warner Brothers Discovery. That's Turner. Okay? About adding 4 to 8 teams. Our goal here is to try and get to either yes or no sometime in the next few months because there are a lot of logistical work that needs to be done associated with doing this. If we were to go down this road, you have to start thinking about the opening weekends, who has to travel the longest. It gets complicated. What is your thought on the NCAA tournament going to 72 or possibly 76 teams?
There are listeners who are going to hate this. I know there's lots of people out there who are purists. Either the NCAA needs to contract its Division I eligible programs or expand its postseason. Yep. And the same applies to football. It is like the core tenet of the argument that always gets lost, and nobody really talks about it, is it's simply about representation in your postseason. That's it. And if you look at all of the other major sports, all of them, even golf has a playoff that has a percentage representation of the total pros who are eligible for that postseason. Yep. NFL, NHL, NBA, right? Baseball. All of them have a postseason that involves at least 32% of their overall participants.
That's right.
At least.
Yep.
All of them.
Yep.
Right? College football, for years, was stuck at effectively 3%.
3%.
Right? For its playoff.
Yep.
And college basketball with 64 teams or 68 teams out of, I don't know the number now, 335?
363, so it's 19%.
19%. So
are you glad I showed up?
One or the other. One or the other. Either you were, and listen, I totally get the arguments of, oh, well, there's a bunch of teams out of that 365 who are not remotely positioned to be part of that conversation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Nope.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're good or not. It is, do you want to have an equitable representation of participants in your postseason? If the answer is no, if you don't care, you want to have 18%, fine. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
But you're not behaving like grown-ups. Right? And that's to me, that is as simply as it can be boiled down, is these are all the leagues that have the most fans, that have the biggest attention, right? The pro leagues. What are you going to model yourself after them, or are you going to do something that's totally not that, even if it means abandoning tradition, whatever that means, right? There was like people lose sight of the NIT was once the preeminent postseason tournament in college basketball. Right? The number of teams and participants have changed over the years. All of those things are constantly changing. But for whatever reason, there's this vocal crowd saying, "Oh, you have to stay with 64/68."
Right.
I don't agree.
Well, I've talked about the percentages for years. 3% became 9% in football. 19%'s been the stable number in basketball for a while. And look, is it any surprise that the ratings were the highest in 8 years for the NCAA basketball Final Four? Everybody, well, you've got nothing but chalk. Cinderella has a very short life, okay? Very short shelf life, okay? People after the opening weekend want to see chalk. Well, chalk means major teams, major conferences.
Well, and the ones who have proven that they're really good. You know, I mean, if we're getting to the essence of what people want to see in the highest levels of sports, this is stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yesterday, there was a woman on Golf Channel, right, talking about the ladies, the women's U.S. Open that's about to happen.
Erin Hills.
And her sentiment was, I just want to see all of these players, all of these women playing their best golf. That's it.
Yeah.
Is you don't want the best at the sport to not be involved. If they don't earn it and they're not the best, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody else gets that opportunity. But you really want to just see, and a couple of years ago in football, you saw that with TCU, right? Reaching the national championship game.
Yep.
They weren't the best.
Nope.
And if it had been an expanded playoff, they probably wouldn't have gotten that opportunity
Right.
and wouldn't have been the team that got into that final situation. So I don't have any issue with the underdog coming through and winning games and even earning the right
Sure.
to play in a championship game.
Sure.
But when your playoff is limited and you don't have the number of participants that you need, you don't have the number of rounds that you need, it inhibits that. It inhibits that opportunity to pit the best versus the best.
Well, that's you on the golf course tomorrow. 3-time defending champion of Coaches versus Cancer.
That is not accurate, but I do have a couple. Wins in there.
Actually, believe it or not, I do too, and it always looks bad. Especially when I used to MC the post. I don't think they're doing a post thing anymore. You're MCing and your team won. You're like, okay, this is really good. Kind of like quiet.
I love it. As long as we're not putting in a 52 or some stupid number that looks like cheating.
Oh.
I am proud as ever to win any charity golf tournament I'm involved in.
You got that right. Absolutely. Hey, we'll see you later.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Nate Bauer. And we'll come back with more in a moment.